Hi there folks, my name's Novering24 and welcome to another Microsoft Flight Simulator product review, and today we are having a look at the latest Landmark City Pack available from Orbx. So we're going to be having a look at this today, and it's going to be rather interesting. So of course for me, because I remember looking at the sort of first generation of these sort of city landmark packs for this particular city, and of course I am talking about Landmarks Gold Coast, which has just been released for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I was just saying, like, for me, it's going to be a bit of an interesting review because the last time I remember reviewing the city pack, I think it was called back then, for ye old prepared and FSX Steam Edition. So it's going to be interesting just to be able to see how this pack compares to that one, particularly considering that, of course, we have the team over at Orbx have got a lot of work sort of already. I'm not going to say already done for them, but the team over at Asobo and Microsoft have already done a lot of groundwork with providing some fantastic photogrammetry of the Gold Coast region. So what we're going to be doing is going to be having a look at some of the buildings, some of the regions, and some of how the team over at Orbx have expanded on the experience here in the Gold Coast. As this is my old stomping ground, so it's definitely going to be very nostalgic for me to be able to go down through here. So without any further ado, let's remove ourselves from the drone and let's jump into our steed for today's review flight, and let's go check it out in a little bit more detail. And steed for the review flight today is going to be the R66 turbine from Cohen Simulations. I am going to make an absolute fool of myself with rotary winged aircraft again, but it's all for a good cause because that's going to give us a great opportunity to be able to see some of the new sites. And we're going to be operating out of Southport Airport, which is also available from Orbx Direct, which is a fun little GA. And of course, if you're going to be doing some exploring around with Cityscape Gold Coast, then this is definitely going to be an airport that you're probably going to be willing to pick up, either that or the main Gold Coast airport, which of course, for me will always be known as Coolangatta. But anyway, all right, let's without any further ado jump into our R66 and get ourselves underway. All right, let's see if I can remember how to start the R66. We're going to grab our handy checklist here. All right, so we're going to get our fuel valve on. Okay, fuel is good. All right, we're going to set the, there is on. Okay, cyclic friction off. Okay, rotor brake disengaged. Check. All right, battery strobe switches are on. I'm actually going to change my GTN option because I'm running the PMS GTN 750 today. There we go. All right, battery on, strobe lights on. Okay, we're going to set our igniter to enable. All right, area is clear. Fuel cutoff, pull off, check. All right, throttle is closed. Start button, push and release. Okay, start button, push, release, fuel in. All right, nope. Did I have an engine catch? There we go. That's what I want to see. A little bit more than 3 seconds, but we got the engine caught. That's good. Alternator is on. Avionics on. Nav lights on. Check. All right, fuel guard in place. All right. Test. Good. All right, I actually remembered that. That's I only need a little bit of help from my start checklist. That's good. All right, now we'll let the engine warm up a little bit. As I said, like helicopters for me are always a bit of a challenge, so we're definitely going to do our best today. No guarantees on how well it's going to go, but we'll see. All right. Through advanced throttle. Engines are stabilized. Alright, remove the collective. Let's see if we can make ourselves for a rather... I'm anticipating this is going to be a rather bumpy takeoff, but we'll see if I can prove myself wrong. Well, I haven't taken out a building, I haven't taken out one of our observers, so I'll take that as a good start. Alright, so what we'll do as we depart from Southport, let's head over to the first of the landmarks here, which is something that I remember from when I was always I remember saying about it with the old ESP landmarks pack of going. I was very disappointed that the SeaWorld and SeaWorld Narrow Resort were not included. So let's go see how they are. And I know in the photogrammetry it wasn't great, so it'll be interesting to see how it looks in this rendition here. So let's head over to the Spit and we'll go have a look. As we come along the entrance to the Morton Marine Park, looks like they've updated the boardwalk and the pier there on the Spit. And now we're going to head down along the national park here and head towards SeaWorld National Park. So it isn't just America that's got a SeaWorld. Australia does have one as well, the Gold Coast, one of the big 3 theme parks on the Gold Coast. Now, the first thing that sort of jumps out about me is this one, is that a lot of this really comes across as that it really is just the photogrammetry that was already here, that we had already as part of the Microsoft and Asobo release of the photoreal. So there's that. Now, clearly, they have added in some additional content here from the team over at Orbx. So great to see, but I sort of have to wonder, as I try not to crash this helicopter, I sort of have to wonder why only replace a couple of the rides? Like, why only replace, a couple of the rides and it looks like maybe like one building? It really feels like this. It feels like a little bit lazy. Just trying to reposition myself here so we can have a better look. As I said, helicopters are not necessarily my forte. So there we go. Slow down, probably a bit out of position, but let's see where we go. All right. So the main entrance to the park is still the original photogrammetry, but the roller coasters have been redone as custom models. So I'm sort of like, okay, clearly you started working on the park, but it feels like, why not do more? Like, it feels like it's sort of like, okay, great that I've got a couple of the rides and they look better. That's great, but what about the rest of it? Now, admittedly, yeah, this is definitely an improvement on what we had in the old ESP version, because the ESP version didn't even have the photo real base. It didn't have anything, but you're working with a great start from Asobo and Microsoft, so it's kind of like, if you're going to enhance it, then enhance it a bit more. So that's a little disappointing as a sort of initial first pass, and something that I was very much looking forward to seeing as an update, because as I said, that I remember saying that was an issue that I had with it the last time. So anyway, let's continue along down. Now, of course, this area here is a very, very wealthy area. There's a lot of the Bellagio, the Marina Mirage, which of course was very, very famous for those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s here in Australia. And it's great to see that they've actually modelled the helipads here in the off the Marina Mirage. So there is plenty for frantic palm tree flyers to be able to come by and land on. But then again, it's one of those things where, okay, cool, I've got the marinas, I've got the boats, but what about sort of like some of these buildings here? And sure, great that the photogrammetry is, it is photogrammetry. It is what it is. And clearly we've got some custom models here along the piers. Why not extend it to the rest of the Marina Mirage as well? Like, this is a very iconic part of, main beach here in the Gold Coast. So why was this not modeled? Like, why do we not have this added in? And it just feels like a lost opportunity on this one. Like, it's like, yeah, great that you've done something, but there really could have been more done. I'm not saying that it's bad. Like, it's great that we've got more helipads here. Like, that's always awesome. As the Don would say, does it have helipads? And you can absolutely say that yes, this add-on does have helipads. But if I'm getting a city pack, it's sort of like a landmarks pack, then especially for an area that has photogrammetry already, maybe I'm expecting too much. I don't know, but I can clearly see that, we've got the marina along here with, custom boats, custom marine berths here. And I don't mind the fact that, I don't expect every building to be replaced by a custom building. But for ones where you can see, like SeaWorld with the SeaWorld Resort, it's like, okay, well, you replace some of the buildings, why not replace all of them? That just seems like an odd choice. I am sure there's a reason for it, but it does seem like an odd choice. Now, as we fly further along the strip here, we've got the Pink Hotel here. Very iconic hotel that I remember driving past many a time on my way driving down through the Gold Coast. It's kind of cool to actually see that modeled and represented here, and well placed and custom placed on top of the supporting photogrammetry. And again, like, I'm not saying that they should, I expected them to replace every part of photogrammetry with a custom building at all, and this one is a good example of doing it right. If I sort of move my head view here, where you've got the photogrammetry as sort of like the base buildings underneath, and you've used the major iconic building on as the main one, and replace that with a custom model. So this is where I think they've done a good job of integrating it in with the photogrammetry. But that's a pretty cool one. And then we've got more skyscrapers here along here. And the one thing that I will definitely give them credit for is that, much like with the and it's funny because sometimes you do have to sort of go figure out that, yeah, there's a custom building there. Which one is a custom building versus which one is part of the photogrammetry. One of the things that this add-on does, like, and all of the sort of landmark city packs really do well, and I think is important that, why they actually are around, and why I think that they are important add-ons to have for our community, is that it does enhance the sky, the outline of the sky when you see it, because the photogrammetry does a pretty good job, but it will fall on hard times with some particular buildings, and particularly like the way the skyline looks. So as I'm approaching and flying along the main beach here, down through Southport, through Cavill Avenue, I'm seeing the skyline that I absolutely remember seeing, both from the ground and from the air. So, for me, the landmarks packs are great, for doing that and for enhancing that experience. And overall, seeing these custom buildings here, so you're seeing all the large skyscrapers modelled really, really well. That's the Seoul Tower, which I think had just been finished. I think when I left this part of Australia. So seeing all these buildings here completed, and as I said, like, these are integrated pretty well into the photo reel underneath them. So a lot of the iconic buildings along the Gold Coast skyline are now modelled and here, and not going to be missed when you're coming in on approach. And for anybody who flies your tube liners, this visual will be really important for you, because the approach into Cooley takes you straight down. One of the approaches takes you straight down past the strip here. But it's kind of cool seeing parts of the city here, and looking at these buildings again. As like I said, it is great seeing the skyline look more like it was. Like, it was great seeing it when the Asobo came out with their Australia sort of add-on, and we saw, and I got to see, more of the skyline that I remembered. But not just much like what I said when I reviewed the Sydney City Pack, having these extra buildings, extra add-on buildings added into that skyline just gives you that little bit more when you're wanting to actually fly through this part of the world. Now, as we come through here, I'll cut through here, cut through the middle of here. I'm sure I'm breaking a lot of CASA regulations right now doing all this. But it does, you can see we've got a custom building there with Q1, Peninsula Tower there, it's a custom building there, and they're integrated very cleanly, very smoothly into the photogrammetry underneath. Now, you do have some animated watercraft that are actually active along the beach as well. It's always kind of cool to see. Some more towers along here. So looking along here and actually seeing all of these buildings and seeing the skyline, it does bring the Gold Coast back to, not back to life, but it does give you that little bit of extra life for it as well. Is a little disappointed with the SeaWorld one. It's kind of like that really felt like a cop out. Even if they just did the front entry building and the one with the giant SeaWorld painted on the top of it, that would have been really, really good. It just would have just cleaned it up a little bit better rather than just like 2 roller coasters. Really, that's how you enhance SeaWorld? That didn't feel about right. Now, this is an interesting area for me because there's a casino over here. So that's the Oasis Shopping Centre, which there used to be a monorail heading from Crown, used to be called Jupiter's Casino. It's going towards Star City now, and this is all new. None of this was built when I was last in this particular part of the world in real life. So seeing these all added in and these towers. And Conrad, well, it used to be called Conrad Jupiter's there, but now it's called the Star, I think. Yeah, the Star. And there used to be a monorail that used to go from the Star over to the Oasis apartments and shopping centre. And that's, again, another one of those. This is another one of those ones which is a little bit odd, where they've done a custom model. Let's see if I can get a bit closer so you can see it. So they've done a custom model of part of the Oasis. So this part here of the Oasis, that's a custom model, but then it's like the rest of the base is very much not, and it's not like it's the greatest photogrammetry either. So again, that just feels a bit jarring, that it's like, why do half the building in a custom building and then the other half not, particularly for an area like this, which is, there's a lot going on in this area. This was one of the Pacific Fair here, one of the largest sort of shopping districts in Queensland is there as well. So it's kind of like you've got this whole Star City casino island done with custom models, but you skipped the convention center and you only half did the Oasis Center. So it feels, as I said, it feels a bit odd. It feels like this was incomplete. Maybe I'm being too pedantic here. Maybe I'm expecting too much. I don't know. But this definitely feels like an odd choice of going, doing the casino island and not doing the convention center. Okay, you know what? Okay, I'll get that. That's fine. But considering that they're connected by a walkway that you could have done as well, that feels a little odd. But then again, it's also thinking about who is this pack for? Now, if you're a airliner, sort of tube liner pilot, then probably this is probably all you need, because you're not going to be going around here at the kind of altitude that I'm here flying with this Robinson. You're going to be looking at it from 5,000 feet. As you're flying the approach coming in to land at Cooley. But for the helicopter mafia and for people like myself, we're going to be checking out, this more lower. We're going to be wanting to do crazy stuff. We're going to be trying to land on these buildings, and it feels like this is. It's like this add-on doesn't quite know who it's for. If that sounds right. Like, we got we got our helipads, for the Gulf Mafia, but then it's like maybe do a bit more detail on those particular areas. Now, of course, from here we're moving. We're going to look at another couple of included parts here as we fly over the more traditional, or the included photogrammetry. And I've talked a lot about the Microsoft Nasobo photogrammetry so far in this review, and that the reason why I'm talking about that a lot is because this add-on is expressly designed for you to be using that in the sim. While you can use it with photogrammetry turned off, it is very explicitly designed for you to have the Australia World Update installed as well as photogrammetry enabled for your sim. I've always had mixed feelings. For anyone who's watched my content and sort of seen me around for a while, you would know that I have very mixed feelings about content, about photogrammetry content. I must admit that a lot of the new photogrammetry that's coming out, the last couple of city updates that we saw from Microsoft and Asobo, I was a lot more impressed by that content, and seeing if we're going to have that over there being updated in the future sounds good. And I'm finding that whatever performance issues, touch wood, that I used to have by having photogrammetry enabled seem to be dissipating. So obviously some work's been done with some optimization leading into the future here. All right, as I finish that tirade here, this is coming up on one of the stadiums that's included and custom modeled here as part of the Landmarks pack, CBus Stadium. So fun fact, I actually did a obstacle course race through a stadium event here at this stadium many moons ago. It was a rather interesting event because it actually had, it's weird actually because I've never seen it during the day. I've only ever seen this place at night during the race. We sort of went all through these flats out here, out into the creek there, and then back into the stadium. So it's kind of cool. And for those of you wondering, yes, you can land on the grass inside the stadium as well. You can tell this is a custom one because we've got the Gold Coast Titans logo there. Wait, I think it's the Titans. That's the NRL team here. I think that's them. But this is also probably a good chance to show off some of the night options here. So let's turn and have a look at it here at night. And we can see that you've got the custom lighting and all of the, well, at least maybe not all, because I haven't checked out every building that it came with, but most of the buildings that all the buildings that I have looked at so far, which is a fair few of the ones that are included with this pack, all have some form of custom night lighting and night lighting effects here that have been added in. So good to see here. They kept the lights, the neon lights showing off on the edge of the stadiums and the various buildings as well. Always look pretty good as well. We got the television monitor there for watching the game. I don't know, maybe one day we can have like animated players that can actually like play games and these things, or am I just going too far? I think I'm going too far. I think I'm absolutely going too far. But yeah, it is kind of cool to actually see again, which is one of those juxtapositions I was talking about before. Like, I can see that there's so much level of detail in certain parts of this add-on, and then other times there is not. And it always seems like a bit of a weird place for sometimes them to expend their efforts, and then other times to not put their efforts in. All right, well, let's head up now to the next one. This is another stadium. We've got two more little stops to make on a little preview, review video of Landmarks Gold Coast. So let's go check out another stadium. Because as we learned from Microsoft and Asobo, stadiums are super popular when it comes to wrong button. Stadiums are super popular when it comes to things to include with flight simulator add-ons. So the Gold Coast has quite a large number of stadiums of various qualities and various sports, all demanding and vying for the public's attention. This one being Carrara Stadium. I think it's actually might be known as Heritage Stadium, I think, now, after the new sponsor for it. And the funny thing was that when I saw that this one was included, I was thinking, great, that's going to be really, that's going to be cool. That's included because that's going to mean, sorry, Metricon Stadium, sorry, because once I knew that this was going to be included, I thought this was then going to be a perfect opportunity. Because this one is this one's the aerial ping pong. One is the AFL, the AFL Stadium. So when I saw that this one was going to be included, I thought that's going to be perfect because right next door to this stadium is the Westpac life-saving helicopter station for this part of southeast Queensland, which is this little building right over here. So I thought, great, they're going to have a stadium and they're going to include the helipad, and they did not. That is just the bog standard part of the photogrammetry supplied by Microsoft. And I was really, really disappointed with that. Like, that was an absolute, like, freebie, like, that they absolutely could have given to the community with this one. They absolutely could have done that. It could have pitched that as a major selling point as well, because one of the major selling points for this, marketing points for this add-on has been that it's got the helipads for the Gold Coast University Hospital and for the marina. Why not give us an actual helicopter base, which is literally right next door to one of the POIs that you've custom modeled? And again, it just feels like that was a massive missed opportunity. And for me, I actually used to work in one of my previous roles or whatever. At some point, I was actually involved with being in that, worked there for a bit of time. So I was kind of like, yeah, I was really excited, really looking forward to be able to, fly out of there, because particularly if helipads are being advertised, and then to have that not included was kind of like, again, maybe I'm expecting and asking too much. I'm not sure, but it really felt like such a missed opportunity. It really, really did. But in the meantime, let's go onwards now to, as we round out this review, let's head on now to Gold Coast University Hospital, which is one of the promoted helipads that has been included with this one. So let's go check it out, and let's see if I can make an absolute fool of myself trying to land on it. Alright, here we come up to Gold Coast University Hospital. So Australia doesn't have a lot of university hospitals, but this one actually gets it because there is actually Griffith University is actually next door, and they have their health department, sort of health faculty there. So we've got the custom models of all the major buildings here at the hospital. I can see the helipad there. Now, I used to know the actual approach plate for this one from the work that I did with the Westpac team, but I do not remember it right now, and helicopters, as I've said before, are definitely not my strong suit. So we are going to do a Nova style approach and see if I can hopefully not die. Actually land on the pad and not die is always a good start. So let's see what we can do here. All right. Okay. All right. But I'll give the credit, like the detail of this is definitely not just a port over of the Gold Coast University Hospital model from, well, at least it doesn't look like it's a port from the one that they put in for the old F6 prepared one. Like, this one definitely looks like it's better in terms of the quality of modeling. Again, okay, this is going to be super pedantic, but it doesn't have all the markings that I expect to have, like the weight and the diameter markings that I expect, and I'm pretty sure I've seen from reference photos that this helipad actually has. But let's see. Okay, it's not on the cross, but I'm on the pad, and it wasn't a terrible landing. Not too terrible anyway. I didn't break any skids. All right, let's give our final thoughts. All right, so final thoughts on Landmarks Gold Coast for Microsoft Flight Simulator from the team over at Orbx. So on the It does what it says on the tin. However, it feels like a missed opportunity. Now, this is something that is often I have often sort of said about city packs and landmark packs is that they can be a very difficult thing to judge because they are probably the most subjective in terms of value propositions in the flight simulation space. They are scenery that you don't really interact with. They are scenery that it doesn't enhance your experience. It depends on what you want to enhance. What this add-on does and does very, very well is it adds in a number of significant buildings that were either missing from the original, but missing from the supplied world update from Microsoft and Asobo. It enhances a number of ones that were there. It fills in ones that weren't. It adds in some additional helipads, which is always a great thing to add in helipads. Though, of course, given the fact that we've got 2024 coming fairly soon, that may or may not be of much importance anymore, but it enhances the skyline. So if you fly regularly around the Gold Coast hinterlands, in and out of Coolangatta, in and out of Southport, or if you fly on the Golden Triangle from Brisbane to Sydney and Melbourne, if you fly in that, then you are going to recognise and you're going to see a better Gold Coast skyline than you would by default out of the box. Or even with the world updates. So that it does very, very well. It absolutely does. What it doesn't do, though, is it doesn't do is probably the wrong word. But it feels like it misses the mark. It feels like it's missed something. They had so many opportunities. You model the Carrara Stadium with the Metricon logos. You do it all, and it's done really, really well. Like sponsor logos inside, TV screens inside, night lighting, great. But you missed the life-saving heliport next door. They added in the couple of roller coasters, so we didn't have to deal with the god awful photogrammetry sort of stretched image over random lidar data. But then didn't update any of the key buildings that make SeaWorld. It feels like there were just so many missed opportunities in this pack. It really did. Like, as I said, is it a good pack? Look, it does what, as I said at the start of this, finalization, final thoughts, it does what it says on the tin. But it could have done so much more. And that's very much going to be that it's going to be a tough call for everyone to think about what they want. If you're mostly after the skyline and to see the skyline and to be able to, especially for those of us who are locals or those of us who know the area, to be able to get a skyline that is more like the one that we actually expect to have, then yes, this is a great pack. But if you're looking for that little bit extra to be able to, do some fun exploring and stuff like that, and do some helicopter rescue ops and stuff like that, and make use of the helipads that are here. Like one of the most common routes that the helicopter flies is that the Westpac helicopter will fly from their base at Carrara. They will go to a site, medevac somebody out, and they'll bring them back to the Gold Coast University Hospital. Like, it's almost like you can't have one helipad without the other. So it feels like there was definitely very much a missed opportunity here, which is a real shame. I definitely kind of expected better. But so yeah, look, this is straight up. This is a mixed review. I said, like, what they have done well, they have done very well. But there are so many missed opportunities in this add-on pack that it is difficult for me to say it's a definite buy. So yeah, that is going to round this one out. So I do want to say, as I said, mixed review. Very much buy beware. This is up to you. I think for those of you who are mostly fixed wing and airliner pilots, this is probably going to be, ironically, this is probably going to be more for you because of the skyline enhancements. for GA low and slow flyers, then this and helicopter aficionados, just take it. Will it still be good for you? Yes, but as long as you're aware of the challenges of it. So there you go. Anyway, well, that does round out this review. As we round out that, I just do want to say once again a huge shout out, a huge thank you to the team over at Orbx for supplying me with a review copy of this add-on today. And if you want to pick it up, you can pick it up now, available now from Orbx Direct, with the link available in the description down below. And with that, folks, I do want to say thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, as always, to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying these videos and want to see more. And of course, as always, you can catch up with me and all the things I'm up to between videos by following me on Facebook and on Twitter and on Twitch. Just search Novoing24. All right, folks, thanks very much for watching. Take care, safe skies to all, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.